swing beam is what I get right to putting that together. And it's pretty straightforward, as you see here. Putting your green brackets on and the bolts that go through it, and washers and nuts on one end, and then the other end you have your other brackets, and you put those on the same way. I just hand tighten them at first, running these bolts through here. A lot of times these pieces of wood will have a lot of sawdust or stuff inside these holes, so if you can't push the bolts through, you know, you might want to run a screwdriver through and clear the stuff out of there first. Or if you pick up some sawdust like you just saw there, I ran it through the threads first and then I ran it through the hole so it catches the threads by hand, and you'll come back later and tighten them up with wrenches or however. So there's your swing beam, just the ends of the swing beam. There's more to it, but I like to build this section first. It's like a triangle shape, as you see here. It's all laid out. A lot of the longer size pieces, so they're easier to find. And this here bolt goes through all of them. At the top there's only one that's really long bolt. It's the longest bolt, and it's only one by itself in the bag. That's this one right here. You run that through, and be careful with this one too that you don't strip out the threads, because you only have one of them and you don't want to mess this one up. So, you know, if you have to ream these holes out, make sure there's no wood or pieces in there or stuff that'll strip it out. So just make sure you run the threads first, even if you have to do it, you know, before you put it through the holes. You know, make sure it catches the threads and it's nice, and then run them through the holes and catch the threads on these nuts and bolts, or nut barrels I should say, and bolts. Some get washers, some don't. Most of them, when they're going against wood, they'll get a washer, just like it says in the book. You'll see the owner's manuals follow me around all through this video here. So I go zip through using the little drill bits that they give you. They're little torque bits that you can put in your drill gun and use, and then they give you these little L wrenches too that are also torque bit L wrenches. So you have your little triangle that's going to go on the end of your swing beam and attach to it. Just lay this down for now, approximately where it's going to be, and then go back to your swing beam, and as you see here, it's going to get these appropriate nuts and bolts. Step 3 shows, and it's just attaching this L bracket assembly to the triangle. Swing beam is going to get lifted up there and attached, and this is all going to be one piece. And I'm going to use this one big piece, kind of like a sawhorse, if you will, and lean the walls against it if I need to later on when I build the tower, which is the wall. So here I got the bolts ready, swing beam, get a hold of it there, and the right direction. It's going to slide right into place. Everything's loose here. Remember, I didn't tighten these nuts and bolts yet. These nut barrels and the bolts that go through there. They're just kind of hand tightened down, and then you get to the last two right through here. After you put these through, you want to like jiggle it, like you just saw me there, jiggle a little bit, get these bolts through, and then make sure these two pieces of wood are nice and flush inside there, right, all inside there. You know, sometimes you just kind of lift it up and let it do what it does and let it hang the way it does, so that it's nice and flush, the two pieces of wood against each other, before you tighten this bracket down nice and straight, and then just tighten that whole bracket down and move on and just let it sit there. To the next step here, which is the bolts that are going to hold all the swings, and they're really long. They look just like this. These are them. I pre-pull them, and the washers that go through, a big ring washer. They're easy to find too during all that, in the middle of all that screw packages. These big bolts and big stuff is easy to find, and you can sort the little stuff later. As you see here, I just run it through a big washer, ring washer, and then another washer on the other end, and a nut. Just hand tighten it for now, get it started, make sure it's not stripped out, make sure it's, you know, catches the threads nice and smoothly. Same with these, and you just go all the way down with 6 of these or whatever, however many there are, and just put those through. Gets a long ring washer, and then washer on the other end, and nut. And sometimes you might have to get a screwdriver or maybe the bolt itself and just kind of push it through, in and out through the hole, because a lot of these holes sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes these holes have a lot of sawdust or stuff inside the hole, and just push that stuff out of there so it doesn't mess up your threads when you go to connect. You want a nice clear hole. Onto the slide assembly. This is actually step 1. I just jump around. I jumped around. I went into the step 3 and then back to step 1. They say you need 2 people for this, but as you can see, this is how I do it. I lay it on a flat surface, one edge of the slide, green piece, and I start at the bottom of what's going to be the bottom of the slide, and I put it right up against the groove there in the end, and that's the piece that's going to get this piece of wood at the bottom with 3 holes. I've already gone through the slide there with the first hole. Moving right along real quick here, and I'm putting the first screw and T-nut into the top there. What I did is I held that piece of wood just like you see there, pinching it with my hand, and I ran the drill, which is there on the other side there, through the wood and right through the plastic, and I made that first hole. And then so I put a T-nut into the wood and the screw through, and it kind of snugs it up there tight, and it holds it at the top. So then I go, as you see here, to the second hole. I've already popped through with the 3/8 drill bit on that drill, just like you saw there, through the wood and then right through the plastic and out the other end. And then I'm just cleaning up the the debris around the hole there of the plastic. Wants to stick to it. Put a T-nut into the wood on the back side of it, and screw in the bolt in the front, and then you'll have that one hole at the bottom too. So you go through the hole, the pre-drilled hole in the wood, so you're basically only drilling through the plastic as you're making the hole in the plastic piece. And as you see, the bottom one will pop through there, nice, much the same. Once you have the 3 screws into the bottom, it holds it nice and secure, and you come across and put the top part of your slide, which is the other edge, in, and these 2 support braces in where they go, 2 little square slots where they drop into, just as you see here. And then press down on the top and make sure that that yellow piece is in the grooves. You see I put my knee on it, or you could sit on it, or however, get those first couple started, and it's holding it nice and tight together. And then you put all these screws in appropriately where they go. There's pre-marks where they all go. And your slide is all set. Nice. Put that off to the side. You'll be attaching that later on down the road. Off to the rock wall assembly. You pull a whole bunch of these pieces marked appropriately. You'll have the instructions as you see there right by me. Make sure I'm pulling all the right pieces, and see how I put the top piece and the bottom piece and then the 2 side pieces all together. I make my basic frame, because I line up each of those edges nice and flush with the edge on each end, and then I take all those other pieces, lefts, rights, middles, and I just lay them all across. Boom, as you see, it jumps right to it. I've spaced them out just a hair in between each one, and I put 1 screw in each side all the way down, and that way you can adjust it if you mess up and you have to move one a little bit. You can take that screw out and have another screw to work with. Anyway, or another hole to work with, but each one gets 2 screws on each side. So it's a lot of screws. Make sure you use the right screws on this. Should be a big bag of them, much the same. And then you just put these little plastic things on appropriately with T-nuts. I'm banging them in the bottom there. If you could put a screw through there and pull the T-nut and get it to sink in, that's even cooler, all in one shot. And you attach them all the same way. Pretty straightforward on this rock wall. It's a little time consuming. You just gotta put in the time, get it done, and then poof, off to the ladder assembly. This is also pretty straightforward. You know, you build all these pieces with all these little pieces, and you build all, make something out of all these little pieces, and then they all come together, and you just build your whole set from there. So I'm putting the nice edge of each one of these steps, because the kids are going to step on each one of these steps going up the ladder, and I like to put whichever edge looks better towards the top. You know, there's always one edge that looks a little bit nicer than the other, so make it look pretty as I'm going along. And these are going to get screws in each side, 2 screws in each side, all the way down the edge of this, and a piece of wood on the top there. Make sure you pull the right piece and then just screw it in with the appropriate screws, and that'll keep your side edges straight, and then just fill the rest of the screws in on each step, just like that. Pretty straightforward. Put it next to the rock wall and your ladder to be attached later on, and then it's off to building the walls. You're going to have 2 main wall pieces that are going to be connected with just straight pieces of wood later on. That's going to connect the front face and the back face of the walls to the tower. And it's time consuming, I guess, on these, pretty much. You go ahead and pull all the appropriate nuts and bolts for each section, and screws as well, nut barrels, T-nuts, all that. And as you can see, I'm carrying the instructions with me right there. The owner's manual right by your side to make sure that you're pulling the right bolts. You're going to be going back and forth a lot, looking at make sure you have the right size and pulling the right pieces. And you just pretty much attach them just as you see here. There's a nut barrel, pops through the bottom, each one of these holes. And you want to make sure those side holes, see those holes on that side pointing towards me? I want to make sure when you're laying this out that you go lay them out exactly the way it says in the owner's manual there. Exactly the same way. So those long sides, those long sideboards, you want to make sure the 2x4s, those are they have holes on the outer edges or inner edges, whatever it calls for. Make sure they're laid out exactly the way it shows. Even if you have to look at it 2 times, 3 times, just to make sure they're laid out exactly the way they go. And see here, I'm double checking, triple checking with the book before I put all these screws down, just to make sure it's exactly how it goes. So later on down the line, you're going to attach a whole bunch of other stuff to it, and you want to make sure any kind of pre-drills which are on these are pointing the right direction. And so you have your 2 main wall pieces. I'm bringing them over and using that swing beam as a sawhorse, if you will, roof swing beam, putting the T-nuts, tapping those ahead of time into that piece. Here are your M5 face boards that go on first with the appropriate screws. Put those on, and you can see the pieces are leaning against the swing beam, and it's kind of like holding the pieces up so I can get in there and work on them. Nice little area this particular day to work in. Clean, grassy area. And you put these pieces on just like so. Your ground board, L3. Zip that on there with the lag screws, and you can see the instructions with the tape measure on it right there next to me, because I'm constantly checking. And you can see right in the same area where I'm sitting that all the little packages of screws are all there laid out, so I can refer to them and pull the appropriate screws. It's a lot of back and forth, different sizes, so you're constantly switching different sizes. You want to make sure you got the right screw every time. Put the safety board across with the appropriate hardware, and as you put each piece, you can see it's making it more solid, more like a cube, a solid little box that you're building, basically. Your outer edge supports, your angle board support here, M9. Attach all these pieces, and as you see, there's all your bags of hardware slowly getting taken care of, process of elimination. Floor rails, K5 right there, putting that piece on, and you could see the swing beam there kind of arched over. It's going to be swung around to the other side right here, moving this stuff out of the way, as you see there, because the swings are going to be on the other side from where I'm working right now. And this whole thing is going to be spun around too. This is your K1 support board with your swing beam support board. It's going to attach there because you can see the 4 little T-nuts that I pre-inserted. And here's your swing beam, swinging it to where they want it, where they want their swings to be, right there in that location. So swinging this around, now that it's built, it's easier to deal with, and just lining that up so that that support beam on top lines up with the swing beam with those 4 little T-nuts. And off to the other side, put the other support beam on top, and that should have 2 holes in the middle, whereas you see the one across on the other side has 4, and the holes in the middle, those 4 shining T-nuts, are the back end of that swing beam. It's going to attach. I could either attach it now or attach it later. Somewhere along the lines I eventually attach it. So there's your tower, box built, and now you can just add to it. Here the first thing it calls for is the tarp supports, M3, attaching with 2 screws on each end that come through the pre-drill holes and into the side of this. So you want to make sure you're nice and lined up, nice and straight on these, because you get the one shot there at lining up those screws, and it's a thin area. So off to the next step, the angle braces. You get a bolt through these where the floorboard is, and then you get lag nuts, or lag screws actually, that go through here with a washer, lag screw, and go right into the side there of the wood. A couple of more floor supports go along each edge here, and in the corners are going to get some square blocks also screwed into each one of these corners as well, after these cross supports go on for your floor, because your floorboards are going to drop right in and sit on top of these and get screwed into these. Here's your end floor cleats, those little square blocks I was just mentioning in the corners. And here comes your floorboards, 3 pieces here that are going to sit right there. These 3 floor panels, you can kind of space them out where there's like a thin space in between each piece, so it looks nice and even. You don't want to run them all super tight on one side and then have a big gap on the other, so just space them out accordingly, make it look pretty, and then just go through and fill all the holes in with the appropriate screws. Should be a big bag of them because you're going to use a lot of them here. And then just screw the entire floorboard down, all 3 pieces, and then off to your wall panels here. They're labeled. The 2 wall panels are going to get screws in them just the same way the floorboards did. It's going to cover that area where the swing beam's at. And then you put on your pickets. Big bag full of screws here for the pickets. It's pretty straightforward there. And onto your serving board, appropriate screws, build your serving board support here. Pretty straightforward. Little pieces, little screws. You want to make sure these things are lined up nice and straight as you can, right in the middle of each piece. You don't want to have it kind of angling off to the edge or the side of the piece. You want to make sure it's lined up. The more perfect in the center each screw is, the better it'll hold and it won't split. Anything bad, nothing bad will happen. So as you can see, the whole front I'm putting on here, and I have the instruction owner's manual right there with me, because there's a lot of different size pieces and different size screws for this. Once you have that all screwed down, you go to your support board there in the front. Nice. And this is the part here. The 3/8 hole is going to go through right where you see there and get a different bolt and a nut barrel from the inside. And I just do it by hand and then come through and make sure all these screws are tight and these bolts are tightened up nice. And on the inside there's going to get a lot of little screws, screw all those little pieces down. But this bolt holds everything nice. And there you have it, the front section. I'm putting the little serving board on now. If you have two people, one person can hold it nice and perfect. If not, you just kind of hold it nice and flush and centered, and then get your first screw or two started. You can see right there. After that, it's a bunch of screws and a lot easier. And then off to the handle grips. That's pretty straightforward here. Zip those on real quick. Some of them pre-drill little holes with lag screws, and others that I just pointed out to that have pre-drill holes that are going to get bolt and a T-nut on the inside. And you just attach those. Those are pretty easy. Off to the tarp. It goes right across over your roofs there. You just keep on jamming through the owner's manual and putting these pieces together. This is your tarp. Gets screwed down to each side all the way across. Once that's on, you go to your bench here and you pre-build your bench accordingly. It's pretty straightforward as well. And after this is built, you can see that little green bracket on the inside there. It's going to attach at the bottom to the front of the swing set, to the front of the tower there. Just line it up with the window there, kind of in the middle. I think it's about 7.5. Yep, there you go, 7.5 from the edge. And then just give yourself a 3/8 hole that you drill right through the metal bracket and through the wood out the other side. Sometimes there's little wood chips, you got to clean that hole, and then just put your appropriate hardware through there, and that's attached. And then off to the ladder, the slide, as you can see here. Go into the center hole, and I believe there's a hole on each side of that you have to make with the same 3/8 drill, and they just get little 1/2-inch bolts and T-nuts at the bottom, or nut barrels. There's your rock wall assembly, which attaches with 2 lag screws from the inside underneath. It's pretty straightforward, just the 2 screws go through. Just make sure it's lined up real nice, and then your ladder is going to be attached just like the rock wall in the same fashion. 2 lag bolts that go through the pre-drilled holes and into that. Actually, that might be small nuts with T-nuts. And then you attach your swing beam to those 4 T-nuts at the top, and it's pretty straightforward. Hang your swings, which I've already done here, you can see, and there's a middle swing that's custom ordered. Attach your swings and you're pretty much ready to go. Your Somerset swing set is all set and built, ready for the kids to enjoy. Give it a once over and make sure everything's nice. And there you have it. Thanks you guys for watching another RubberToe assembly video. Look forward to more. And here is a great swing set, play set. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.